Hey everybody, today we are debating what's best for the West, atheism or Christianity, and we're starting right now. Hey friends, thrilled to have you here. This is an exciting topic. For me, this is one of my favorite topics to be sure, and I think that you're going to enjoy our speakers. I could tell you through email and a little bit of chatting that we've had, they're very kind, they're very patient, and we appreciate your patience as well. We had a little bit of a late setup as I had to find a new spot. So don't worry though, nothing's gonna stop it, and I am stoked for it. I want to let you know the speakers have their links in the description. So if during this chat you're like, "Hey, this is really good. I like this person," you can go and check them out at their links, and we got both their Twitter and YouTube in the description box below. Also, if you're new here, consider hitting that subscribe button. Whether you're a Christian, atheist, Jedi, or Sith, we are thrilled to have you here. We try to be a nonpartisan channel. We want people to feel welcome no matter what view they come from. We really are shooting for an eclectic, kind of diverse, ideological, diverse group here. And so, glad to have you here. With that, want to introduce our speakers. For our speakers, if you just want to say in like one or two sentences, maybe something that you're excited about in terms of projects on your channel, that's something we'd love to hear and give people just a taste of what other types of stuff you're passionate about. And so if you do, like we could start out with Dave or the Distributist. If you want to share maybe just a project that you're working on right now, thanks for
Sure.
being here with us today.
Yeah, so people probably know me as a Catholic YouTuber, but I rarely ever make videos about religion. I usually make videos about society and culture. And two projects I have, one is a full-scale critique of democracy and its limitations. The other is going to be an exploration of distributism and some of those concepts. Although that one's going to be a lot longer in production because it requires a lot of research. But those are somewhere in the docket for me.
You bet. Well, we're glad to have you here, Distributist. Thanks for coming. And
No
Bionic
problem.
Dance. Glad to have you here as well. If you want to share what you've been up to at your channel, thanks for being here.
Well, hey everybody, like he says, I'm BionicDance, aka Kate, and my usual format is to take someone else's religious advocacy video and debunk the crap out of it, and couple that with some of my, I like to think, entertaining animations, and there you go, that's my usual format. I'm also working on a very large sci-fi animated project, and once I'm ready, I will start casting voices for it. I have about 6 speaking parts that are uncast. And so if any of you think you can act, when I put that call out, be sure to submit a demo reel. I'd love to hear from you.
You bet. We're glad you're here, Kate. And
That sounds fun.
with that, we will not waste time. We're excited to get to hear these speakers exchange ideas tonight. So, want to just let everybody know if you have a question for the Q&A, if you want to shoot it into the live chat, I will scoop it up, put it into a list, and then we will ask those questions to the speakers at the end. And if you happen to have the memory for it, I always forget this myself. If you put an @moderndaydebate at the start of your question, it'll make it a little bit easier, so it'll stand out for me to for sure see it. And and then if you have a super chats, they go to the top of the list automatically that we read off. And then also, if you want to make a comment during the question and answer, you can do that with a super chat, to which one of the speakers, or if you want to hear what both of the speakers have to say, would get to have a response back to it. So with that, not wasting any more time, we are thrilled to have you here. And so with that, we will, the speakers, the floor is yours.
Does
Well,
someone want to
I
go
have to
first?
say that I looked at a lot of your videos, and like you say, you don't make too many about religion, so I don't know your position. Mine's
Rarely any.
fairly clear, so you're going to have to start me out from square one here.
Well, I guess the question is, I think I have made several videos about atheism, which, obviously I'm not here to prove Christianity. I don't even really think you can prove something like that.
Wow, we're on the same page on that one.
But you can prove very, very little in this world. But that's not really the issue. The issue is whether religiosity, and I think I don't know if the resolution is in particular theism, but religiosity, qua religiosity, to be a little bit more general, if that has a positive effect on human affairs and whether it will lead to a positive outcome for the West. Now, I feel very vehemently that this is certainly the case. I know that in the late 20s to late oddies, whatever you call them, sort of the new atheist fad really liked bashing religion as being something that was detrimental to society, and they did this mainly on a few correlations, saying, look, we have Norwegian, we have Scandinavian models where our societies are very rich and prosperous, and these societies are very low in religiosity. And the same thing is true for blue states. But the analysis never got past that. And so I feel in a lot of ways we're kind of stifled by this obsession with doing these broad correlations on countrywide scales. When you look at the data in a more fine-tuned and a much more granular level, you see that none of this makes sense. We do know that wealth and lack of religion are correlated, but all available evidence points to the fact that wealth causes irreligiosity, not irreligiosity causing wealth. So there's no correlation in the other direction. We have every reason to believe this. We see from studies that go on to the micro scale, once you adjust for wealth and education level, religions almost always have a positive impact on sociability, on community cohesion, on a person's likelihood to give to charity, both secular and also religious. And because of this, and that's also backed up by the fact that we see this generally anthropological data that shows that people tend to use religion to survive very harsh, low resource times. It's essentially a huge boost on morale and cohesion in low resource, low wealth environments. So the evidence, I think, as it stands right now, shows that religion is incredibly beneficial to humans at really all levels of wealth. The only problem is that you get more wealthy, you get less religious because there's less, and you need it less. And so I think the question really is for the West is will the West be benefited by getting rid of its religions? And to my mind, it almost certainly wouldn't. First of all, it would leave the West exposed in case we have a huge decrease in resource wealth and in general consumer wealth. Without a unifying religion, is likely to completely get thrown to the wolves. And secondly, birth rates. We have the secular societies seem to have a very difficult time getting above the 2.1 children per woman threshold, which means that it's even hard to see how a West would continue on into the future under that circumstance. So that's generally my case.
Okay, I am definitely, my position is very different. Because the way I see it, religion has a real tendency to be, well, let's face it, prejudiced against certain groups. In fact, often murderously so. And that's where I'm coming from when I would say that the West is probably better off. In fact, the whole world is probably better off without religion, simply because, I mean, speaking as a lesbian, let's face it, a lot of my rights would be curtailed by religious people. A lot of people would say I should never get married. There's even people like Matt Powell who say I should be executed. And that's just one issue. I mean, there's a lot of scientific advancement that religions would often say are like sacrilege, that kind of thing.
I don't believe we have any evidence that shows that scientific advancements is curtailed by religion.
If
that's the case, I mean, the question really is, why did the scientific revolution happen in one of the most religious areas of the entire world?
That's really not the point at all. And I don't suppose, I mean, you were given quite a while to keep talking. I would like my chance here. And then also, you did mention that women are not having as many babies when they're atheistic. Well, I don't really see the problem with that, simply because the world, as I see it, is already fairly overpopulated. We don't need people breeding like rabbits. There's no real benefit to that, especially since when people have more children, their economic situation does get a little more dire because they have more mouths to feed. So I'm not in any way advocating the whole like one child per couple thing with like China does. But at the same time, I don't think that having an accelerated birth rate is a benefit necessarily. And also, I mean, religion does try to force morality on people. If you look at a lot of the motions being passed now by religious politicians, most of them are saying, this is our religion and you will conform to it even if you don't believe. They have sort of it seems at least, I don't want to speak for them and say I know better than they do what their position is. But what I'm observing certainly looks like they're saying they have a certain vision of what the world ought to be like, the sort of neighborhoods they want to live in and what their neighbors are like. And they're willing to use the force of law to enforce that like evangelical vision of the world, whether people want to live like that or not. Whereas if you have a more secular state, people have the freedom to be themselves. And the only time that freedom is curtailed is when they start harming other people. And so, in that way, I'm quite convinced that secularism is better for the West than religion, just because you're pissing off fewer people, frankly.
I mean, so should I come in here? The thing is I don't know exactly where to start or where you want to start on this conversation. The thing is with the birth rates, just because you brought that up first, the difficulty with that is that
that is what I thought the topic was.
Okay, well, I mean, sure. I mean, we can put in one religion in particular. That's good enough. the the thing with birth rates is that regardless of whether people say that the population we're overpopulated, the second nations fall below 2.1 birth rates, the leaders of those nations use that fact as a necessary condition.
Hold on. I'm looking at the chat and people say they can't hear us.
Sorry about that. I forgot to unmute myself. Basically, I was just asking the speakers if they wanted to have religion versus atheism or Christianity versus atheism, and they agreed on keeping it with Christianity versus atheism. So thanks for that feedback. Sorry about that. And back to you guys.
Okay, I'm sort of forgetting my second point, but at least on the birth rate issue, the birth rates, people say this all the time, that we're overpopulated, we don't need more babies. But the second a population falls below 2.1, the leaders of these nations start bringing in massive waves of immigrants from other countries in order to replace that population decline, because their social security programs rely on them. So in essence, these countries have admitted by their own leaders that they can never sustain having a sub-replacement birth rate because of their own social programs. So, I mean,
let's suppose for a moment.
I don't think that this is actually true. I think that what we see.
Can I address that, please?
What specifically are you addressing?
The part about immigration, because you say that people start immigrating. Well, I don't really see a problem with that. The United States is supposed to be a melting pot. No, we are already a country.
It indicates that it's bullshit. The problem. Sure.
I'm just saying I don't see the problem with immigration into the United States, for example, simply because, as I say, we are a nation of immigrants. That was a large part of the point of this country. I mean, it's not like it started out majority European here. So I'm really not seeing a problem with immigrants.
It's not about having a problem with immigrants. It's about demonstrating that these countries feel physically damaged by having a low population growth. They don't go like, oh, we're not having any more children. That's great for our economy. They say, oh, wait, we're not having enough children to support our welfare programs. We need more people. So the thing is that I think it's manifestly the case that people that people actually do need to have a replacement birth rate in order to sustain their social programs. And in absence of that, they really don't know what to do other than to import more people from other countries that have large cultural differences.
Well,
Which really has nothing to do. I mean, you say the United States, but I wasn't even thinking of the United States when I brought that up. I was thinking of Europe. So, I mean, these countries, essentially, the second they dip below replacement, their leaders use that as an excuse to bring in more immigrants for the reason that their economy would crash if they didn't. So
okay,
obviously,
still not seeing the problem though. What is the problem?
having your population will have a huge economic impact. Now, an explosion 2.1 is not an explosion of children. 2.1 is sustaining your population.
Okay, but I still want to know what the problem is with immigrants. Why is that such a horrible thing?
I think I might not have made my point. It demonstrates that the people who run the economy.
I understand that part. I want to know what the problem is with having people from other countries.
What do you mean? So if you understand my point, then that's why I brought up immigration.
Okay, but
run the economy understand that they have to have a constantly sustaining birth rate, constantly sustaining labor force. Otherwise, they will have an economic disaster on their hands with entitlement.
Okay, even if I accept that, and I'm not entirely certain I accept that premise, but even if I do, again, you said then they have to resort to a lot of immigration. What's the problem with having a lot of immigration? I mean, you say we have to immigrate people to make this population growth. Well, why is that a bad thing?
Well, I think you're tempting me to get off of topic. The reason is most Europeans don't want immigration, but their leaders are saying that they have to because of the population declining.
That's what I was asking. Why do people not want immigration so bad?
That's untopical. I will ask the Europeans.
No, it's not. It's not. You're saying this is a bad thing.
And I'm trying to figure out how. You need to have a replacement population to sustain a modern welfare state. That's the point I was making.
Yes,
if we get into debate about immigration, will that be topical? The host.
But the thing is, you can't say, and then they have to resort to immigration without saying why that's not a viable alternative. I mean, because the implication is that's bad.
Even if so, but you're saying so if everywhere in the world had sub 2.1 birth rates, you couldn't immigrate from anywhere.
Well, you asked why
that disaster everywhere.
But the topic is why religion is good for the West, not why it's good for the rest of the world.
So you're saying that atheism is rankly economically unsustainable?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying.
So how is atheism not rankly unsustainable if it can't keep a 2.1 children?
Okay, but oh boy. See, again, I'm not saying I necessarily accept your premise, and I just want to hear you explain why it is that immigrants, rather than people who are natural born citizens, is such a horrible thing.
It demonstrates that the system isn't itself sustainable. That's all my point is talking about right now.
It certainly sounds like you were saying foreigners.
Do you want us to get into a debate about whether immigration is good?
I'm just saying it certainly sounded like you had a racial aspect, a racist aspect to your point. But if you don't, then fine, I'll accept that. But here's the thing. I mean, let's suppose I accept your premise, and that people aren't having enough kids if they're not religious. Well, okay, then how do you propose to make people religious so that they're fucking more and having more kids if people don't want to be religious? I mean, because you can't force someone to be religious all in the name of population growth.
I think it will naturally happen. I think people will naturally become more religious as the atheism thing dies down and self-destroys itself. The thing about atheism having sub 2.1 birth rates is that it naturally dies out. It's not Darwinian. So, Charles Darwin is essentially destroying atheism as we speak because it's not a survivable trait to possess. And this is, I personally, you said, do I have a problem with immigration? I personally believe that all cultures should sustain themselves into the future. So it would really sadden me to see Indian culture or French culture or Chinese culture die out. I believe that cultures should sustain themselves in the world, all cultures in all places. And I would hate to see everyone in one culture become atheist and then that culture just dies out because no one is.
Well, again, I'm not sure I accept that premise. I'm really not sure. In fact, I'm going to have to say citation needed.
It's a preference. If you think it's all right for certain cultures to die
that's
out,
not my point.
say that. It's not like
Not
it's
my
a citation.
point. Not my point.
Sorry,
What I'm saying,
what is your point?
the 2.1 falls below when you're atheist part. Citation needed on that.
Well, you can look at the Pew Research study on the expansion of religion, and again, like I said, I don't have all my sources here. If you want to do first of all, I just pulled up one of my paper that I happen to have on my hard drives. When Does Religion Influence Fertility by Kevin McQuillan, published in Population and Development Review in 2004, where he goes over the multiple ways in which religions essentially increase fertility. We know that, broadly speaking, secular countries have a sub 2.1 birth rate, with most of their births coming either from immigrants or from religious groups inside their own borders. And then we can combine this with the Pew Research Center on Religious Demographics, and we can see quite clearly from that the share of atheism in the world population is going to drop like a stone in the next 20 years, with almost all of the numbers it loses being made up by Islam. And the reason why is because Islam has a lot of children and atheism doesn't, and Christianity's basically treading water. So those are the broad, from those three sources, you can suss out this relationship that essentially the sustainable birth rate thing is not working out very well for at least the expressly atheistic people. Now, I'm not so sure, there probably could be some kind of secular religions like communism that you maybe could substitute in that.
Whoa, stop a minute. Half a mo. In what way is communism an atheist religion?
It doesn't have a god and it acts like a religion.
Yeah, okay, here's the thing. If you'd watched my most recent video, I did research and found that there is, in fact, Christian communism that exists.
I'm talking about
you cannot point to communism and say it's an atheistic religion. You can't do that.
I'm talking about Marxist dialectic materialism, not Christian socialists that call themselves communists. Dialectic materialism.
Again, if you're going to make broad, sweeping statements like that, you got to qualify them. Thank you very much indeed.
I supported all my statements in this entire thing. Would you like me to quote from Marx and Engels, where they say that religion is bad?
No, actually, I really wouldn't,
okay,
because
so
again,
consider that to be supported.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing: not every atheist is a communist.
No, I totally agree with that. Right?
Okay.
I'm saying that societies can get cohesion from religious structures. By religion, I mean systems of belief that pass themselves down intergenerationally. Get meaning and purpose from that, even if there's no theistic God attached to that religious structure. But it comes along with many of the same problems, and I would argue worse problems than come along with Christianity.
Okay, well, here's the thing, though, is, as I've pointed out, Christianity is fairly toxic to people who aren't Christians. And that is definitely a problem. There are a lot of people that Christians would see marginalized. You only have to look at some of the laws being passed in the United States right now to realize that Christian dominance over the United States is horrible for a lot of people.
It's strange enough, but the way you talk about it, you make it sound like all the atheist secular side are a bunch of libertarians.
I never said that even slightly. I never said that even slightly.
But we're in the middle of a culture war where there are numerous things going on from the secular side that most people consider very, very restrictive in terms of in the universities, there's all sorts of problems getting platformed. And if you're in Europe, and I know I go back to Europe.
What do you mean by getting platform? Hold on. I need you to clarify. What do you mean by getting platform?
So there's a problem on modern universities where students have a tendency to deplatform conservative and non-progressive speakers on campus. And people can see
I see what you mean.
Very minor, but I think it's a very, very large issue when it comes to academic freedom and the ability to express viewpoints. So I mean, the problem here is that we're just.
But that's not my issue here. That's not even slightly my issue here. Okay, because what I'm saying is when religious people say our views on, for example, birth control must dominate, that everyone has to conform to their values.
Okay, that's a great example. Where is that being said about birth control?
Dude, you're going to cause a lot of strife. You're going to cause a lot of people to rebel against it. You're going to have a lot of people who look at this authoritarian view of what the United States should be. The same thing with like getting prayer into schools. Same thing with homosexuality, LGBT equality. There are a lot of people out there. And again, I have to cite people like Matt Powell and what's the other guy, Steven Anderson, who actually say the government should be executing LGBT people. And I realize they're an outlier, but at the same time, they're still Christian. And when I look at that sort of attitude directed at other people simply because they don't follow Christian values, then I have to say that Christianity is toxic.
You would not accept this. If I could find a radical atheist who's like, let's execute Christians, you wouldn't be like, oh, it's an outlier, but this is still all part of atheism.
Okay, but see, that's the thing. No, it's not part of atheism. It's not, because atheism is not a religion, and it's not like a religion.
Yeah, but this is a linguistic trick that gets.
No, it's not a linguistic trick at all.
This is sort of what's kind of fundamentally unfair about this debate, is that no matter how many atheists have done bad things in the past, it never has any impact on how we perceive quote unquote atheism.
Well, that's because atheism is not a cohesive group the way a religion is.
But you're just playing a linguistic
trick. A lot of religious people trying to equate atheism with religion as if it's a godless religion, and it's not. It's not the same thing at all.
The thing is, what I'm trying to illustrate here, BionicDance, is that what you're playing a loaded game here. You're comparing something to nothing, right?
No, but wait, what do you mean I'm comparing something to nothing? What do you mean by that?
It could be true that atheists commit more murders than Christians, and I don't know if that's true. Don't quote me on that, right? But I'm just saying, hypothetically, if it were true that more atheists committed murder than Christians, it would still appear that Christians committed more, because when we looked at the Christian population, we would recognize them as a group, and then when we looked at the atheist population, we could not conceptualize them as a group.
Yes, that's because Christians have an instruction manual, dude. Okay,
you're playing a game that's fundamentally unfair for purposes of empirical comparison.
Well, I'm sorry, but it is unfair. It's uneven. It's not the same thing. You're trying to say
then we shouldn't have a debate comparing apples to oranges.
Well,
if you want to compare,
I'm sorry, but that's the reality. I mean,
it's not a reality. If you say atheism, you're not talking about anything. So it could be it's Christianity versus nothing.
Actually, it's negative. No, see, that's the thing. It's not Christianity against nothing. It's Christianity against its absence.
Absence. Oh, but we don't know what will fill that absence, though. That's the problem.
I'm sorry, say that again?
We don't know what will fill that absence. You have to compare.
Why does something have to but why does something have to fill it?
Nature abhors a vacuum. We've never seen ideologies always fill vacuums. And this is the whole problem, is that since we can't bring up actual atheism as it exists in the real world, because atheist doesn't exist, we can never get a good idea of what a population without Christianity looks like.
Sure, we can. Of course we can.
Be immediately said, well, that's not real atheism, because atheism doesn't exist. And so
no, I never said atheism.
We're not really comparing Christianity.
I never said atheism doesn't
exist. We're comparing it to hypothetically. The problem is, it's fundamentally how this argument's constructed. I mean, it's a linguistic and psychological trick you're doing.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
I think this could be against Islam. It still wouldn't be fair.
You're trying to point at the idea of having no God and acting like it's somehow this cohesive thing where there's like an atheist manifesto or dogma or something, as if somehow it's like a religion, and it's
I can say we could talk about
fundamentally. You fundamentally don't understand the nature of atheism. If what you've said so far is any indication.
No, but I understand the nature of atheism. What I'm talking about is how you're constructing it in this debate.
Hold on. If you understand
the actual
let's hear from BionicDance. Forgive me, Dave. I'm sorry to hear from BionicDance.
Sure.
If you understand the nature of atheism, describe it for me, please, just so I know we're on the same wavelength.
You want a nature of atheism?
I want if no
It's
if
got many definitions. You want
describe
like a
if
standard
you
one?
say you understand atheism, please describe it for me.
It's a demographic group that does not have that denies the existence of God, basically.
Okay, well, that's the thing though, is are all atheists alike?
Or no, yeah, but not all Christians are alike either.
Okay, but here's the thing, do atheists have a Bible?
No. But what,
Do
what are we
atheists
comparing? Are
have
we comparing
do atheists have
demographic groups?
dogma? Do atheists have dogma?
No, you know the answer is no. So go ahead. No.
Okay,
But are we
so
comparing
that's the thing though,
demographic
is you
groups? Are we
can't
comparing ideas?
but the thing is you can't point to atheism and act as if there's something like that you can point to and say this is what atheists believe, and thus this is how a secular society, a society without a god in it, is going to behave. You can't do that.
But since they exist as a demographic group, you can analyze their beliefs statistically,
But
right?
that's the thing,
Like
is there is no atheist belief.
you can examine their behaviors.
I am an atheist because the number of gods I believe in is 0, and that is the only thing you can know about me when I tell you I'm an atheist.
But what are we intellectually comparing? Are we comparing an idea or a demographic? I thought we were comparing a demographic.
What we're comparing is basically if the influence of Christianity, or at least the attempted political dominance of Christianity, will be better for the West or without it. I mean, that's the thing, is that was the topic that I was given, is Christianity going to make the West better, or is not having it, or at least not having it dominate, going to be better? As far as I understood, that was the topic.
Dominate is not. I mean, can I ask you a question? Was Christianity dominating in the 50s?
I wasn't around for the 50s, so I couldn't tell you. I can only tell you about right now. And
I mean,
right now what I see is Christians making this country a worse place. That's what I see right now.
But it manifestly is not true if you look at Christians' actions as a whole.
But I'm looking at
they act more in the community.
I'm looking at
you don't like specific laws. I mean, just on your specific, you mentioned birth,
but that's the thing.
right?
Those
Like
laws
your example was
Christianity.
a few minutes ago. You were saying that Christians were trying to shove their opinion about birth control. They were trying to put it on you by law. What law are you specifically talking about there? Because I mean, I haven't seen a recent law mandating that you can't sell birth control.
I do not look at birth control as just like the pill. I'm also talking about things like abortion.
Oh, so abortion's considered birth control?
Of course it is.
Okay, so Christians are making this country most people do not consider abortion birth control because
you need to do your homework, dude, because yes, they do.
they consider it something that's beyond. I mean, most people consider birth control to be contraceptives.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Okay, well, we can talk about public opinion on this, but if Christianity's position is, I mean, I'm a firm pro-lifer, so I consider that to be a benefit. I don't know exactly how the host wants us to.
I got to address that part though.
Okay, go ahead.
Because when you get Christian people saying that they are pro-lifers, really what they are is pro-pregnancy, pro-birth. But once you're born, you're on your own, just like George Carlin says, okay? Because how many children end up with inadequate food, inadequate housing after they're born? That's not pro-life. That's, and if you really think about it, what they are is anti-sex, because a lot of them act as if
Believe me, Christians are not anti-sex.
Let me finish. They look at pregnancy as the consequence of sex that you're not allowed to get out of. That they say if you had sex, you now have to have that child if you've conceived. Have to. And so really,
you're saying you can't murder the child if you conceive.
No. See, that's the thing is they look at it as a child, and it's not. It's a fetus. If you
fetus just means little child.
No, it doesn't. Have you ever actually looked at the data, at the science on what a fetus is? I mean, when it becomes a feeling, aware, conscious being versus when it's a glob of cells.
What do you mean?
Well, what I
I mean,
mean,
like the
what I mean is that
science
what
the
what
science
I mean.
clearly shows that there is very little difference between a child at like second or third trimester and the baby. What is the difference? Like at 20,
Okay,
at 20
well, the
weeks,
difference.
when you
Okay,
can still,
you.
okay,
Hold on.
at
Okay,
20
Dave.
weeks when you can
Dave,
still
you.
legally abort
But
a child, what's the difference between that and a baby? I want to hear one.
Wait, rewind. I didn't hear that.
At 20 weeks when you can still legally kill the child, what's the difference
Okay,
between
well,
that child
if you're
and a
gonna
born?
characterize it as kill the child, there's no point
No,
having.
what's the difference between a fetus at 20 weeks
Okay,
and a
see,
baby
that's
that's
the
just
thing
born?
is when
I'm waiting for a difference.
when you get pro-lifers saying that they are pro-lifers, what they're always picturing is this cooing little infant that's adorable, but what's getting aborted is not that at all.
I'm going to restate my question again. What is the difference between a 20-week, what's the difference between a 20-week pregnancy and a child?
Uh, Consciousness, a sense of self.
What? There's no sense of self in newborn babies.
I didn't say a newborn baby. I'm talking about the fetus doesn't have that consciousness, that
Versus a
sense of
newborn
self.
baby that's just been delivered.
Okay. Wow.
What's the
Okay.
difference?
This is pointless. You're not hearing me.
At late
Okay, fine.
late second trimester, you can still kill it. What's the difference between that and a born child that's just been born? Name one physiological difference between a late second trimester abortion.
Okay,
late
clearly
second
we
trimester-
have an
second.
ideological difference on this.
One second.
Because as far as I'm
You can't.
concerned,
I asked this question 5 times, and you can't name
just-
a single.
that's
physiological
because we
One
have
thing
such
is-
radically
Period.
different views on this that I
Scientifically
think
demonstrates
what
you
I
have
want-
no
Definitely think-
reason.
This is
I-
definitely an
obviously
important
I
issue.
can't talk to you because you're going to interrupt me
is
mid-sentence.
Definitely an important issue, but just to get back to the central component of the debate, if it's all right if we go back,
Okay.
just because I definitely see how this is relevant and it's like reasonable to address it, but I think that it can easily go down a rabbit hole on this because it's kind of in a way a separate argument.
All right. Well, point being that if you've got a religious pro-lifer and they're insisting that their values be imposed on everybody else, I'm saying no. I'm saying that's bad. I'm saying that shouldn't be allowed. I'm saying that if Christians want to behave like Christians, let them, just hands off everybody else. And not just on the subject of birth control, also on a subject that's really important to me, LGBT rights. Thank you very much indeed.
Do someone want me to respond? I mean, when a baby at 20 plus weeks.
Oh, for crying
gets
out loud.
born at
Didn't we
2,
just say we didn't want to go down this rabbit hole?
Well, you summarized your position, so I'll summarize mine. Someone's values are being imposed on somebody else, but those values are not that of Christians. Values. This is what the great trick of New Atheism has been: is to treat values as if they're something that only Christians have. All laws ever have existed are always based on values.
No.
Based
You're
on values
completely
of some
wrong about
sort. They're
that.
based on. I
Completely wrong.
pro-choicers have values too that they want to have in law. They want to have essentially a legal regime that allows abortion. They just don't want to. They don't want the pro-lifers' values in law.
No, but that's the thing though.
One
That's the thing though.
value
If you want under the system where pro-choicers get their way and have pro-choice, if you're a pro-lifer, you don't have to have an abortion. You have the choice too, but you want to take choice away from people. That's why I was saying before that when you get a lot of religious people and you hear what they say is they have a vision of the world and how it should be, and to hell with anyone else's vision of what they want.
I mean, you're simply not going to portray
What I'm saying is that if you want to live like a Christian, go ahead. Just don't tell everybody else to do it too.
And I think, as far as the LGBT rights go, Christians are perfectly willing to cut some kind of libertarian deal where we all have our own lives that we live independently, as long as we have sufficient protections for religious liberty. And I think that's really the Christian position going forward, although talking about a Christian position is kind of troubling because it's not altogether consistent, obviously.
Yeah, but that's the thing is you do have people who have certainly tried in the past to have laws enacted that are explicitly religious, that would make sure that LGBT people don't have equal rights. I mean, you still have people.
There have been all sorts of laws
have
passed.
people chanting "Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve." That still exists. So
I
when
don't
look
believe. I
at-
mean, I don't believe in that marriage should be handled by the state. I certainly don't believe in gay
Okay,
marriage.
well, the
But
marriage has to be handled by the state for many just purely legal reasons.
not really.
Yeah, really. I mean,
Don't get me
okay,
wrong.
take for example,
Hold on one
like
sec.
power of
We're
attorney.
getting
If
we're getting
someone's
off
in a
topic, I think.
hospital and someone else needs to be making choices for their care because they're in a coma or something, and they have a spouse, that's what the spouse's choice is. The state gives them that legal right. Without that legal right, they can't make choices.
So Dave,
So I got a
Dave,
clarification.
forgive me, Dave.
for
I'm
the
so
host.
sorry. I know that you have an answer. I know you've got a round in the chamber ready to go. Man, I'm sorry to just because otherwise I think this is another rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's another little bit of a rabbit.
Um,
Well, do you want to clarify what you want us to talk about? Because I found it a little bit difficult. I mean, the difficulty I'm coming up against is that it seems like the debate's structured so that past behavior of Christians is fair game, but past behavior of atheists is not.
Well, that's because atheists are not the cohesive group that Christians are. Even if there's like separation between, say, Baptists, Protestants, Catholics, whatever, they still have their own set of rules and their own set of dogma and all of that stuff. Whereas atheists are not that kind of coherent group. So that's the thing is you seem to want to have this like target that you can point to and say this is what atheists believe and this is how like if atheists had their way, this is the atheist manifesto that will be implemented, and that doesn't exist.
I'm not talking about an atheist manifesto, but the problem is we're not. It's not even a fair comparison at that stage. We're comparing a real thing called Christianity to a virtual question mark, a placeholder that has nothing in it.
Well,
so
yeah.
All the negative things, and then
no matter how unfair you think that is, that describes reality.
It's not reality; it's construction of this debate.
No, that is reality. Maybe you need to talk to more atheists.
No, it's not a real. No, you don't believe nothing. I guarantee it. You do not believe nothing. You believe
with regard to a God. Yes, I do.
No, but in regards to everything else, you don't.
Yeah, but do you think that everything else is born out of my atheism?
No, I don't think it is. I think that.
Well, then why are you acting like you need some atheist enemy to be able to attack?
I don't need an atheist enemy. I need the ability to describe an actual group in order to make an actual comparison.
Well, maybe there isn't an actual group. I mean, that's
you're saying that we need to epistemologically exclude atheists.
Well, but the thing is that you're acting like atheists have to act like a religion or like a political party.
Saying you have to. I'm not saying that you personally have to do anything. I'm saying that in order to do science, you need to be able to compare two things that can both be observed.
Well, it's not like that. I'm sorry, but it's not like that. It's not like that. That's not what atheism is.
You can't do that scientifically. It's impossible.
Well, get over it. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's.
Well, I mean.
Here's the thing is the debate is not is atheism better than Christianity. The debate is Christianity better for the West? And I mean, let's suppose for example that Christianity goes away and Judaism takes over. Okay, is Judaism better for the West than Christianity?
Is Christianity better? You have to answer. Then what? Then what? What is the alternative?
The alternative is not having Christianity.
Which will be something. Some ideology is going to come in and actually
that's the thing. It's not necessarily going to be an ideology the way you're describing an ideology.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, do you think you don't have an ideology?
Well, I might, but does it conform to the ideology of another atheist or someone from another religion? No.
So by nothing, you don't mean pure nihilism, right? You don't think that the society, after we get rid of Christianity, will believe in nothing, no moral systems, no. Okay, so they'll believe in something. They'll believe in something.
But that's the thing, is that what it will be is an amalgamation of what everyone can agree to. Okay, and
how do you know that? An amalgamation of what everyone will agree to?
Because that's the way the law is supposed to be formed, and
no,
the reason.
It's not.
Yes, it is. The law is supposed to be formed through consensus.
The law is not. I mean, the law is not an amalgamation of all sorts of different principles. The law has been handed down to a very, when you look at American law as it exists in this country and also in other English-speaking countries, you're not talking about an amalgamation of everyone different beliefs. You're talking about a specific cultural tradition that's been handed down and adapted throughout the last 600 years.
But that's the thing, it's been adapted, hasn't it?
What?
It's been adapted, hasn't it?
Everything has adapted. All ideas adapt.
But basically what I'm saying is that when it's been adapted to conform to Christian values, things have gotten worse for a lot of people.
Absolutely not. What are you talking about?
What do you mean, what am I talking about? I've just given you a double-wide buttload of examples.
Many examples. You've given me a number of complaints about specific Christians, but most of the people who formed this tradition were actually almost all of them were Christians. And almost all of them formed this, with the exception of people like Thomas Jefferson, who's an exception and not a rule.
Okay, that was hundreds of years ago. I'm kind of talking about right now. I mean, because when you look at, again, like I say, the way that Christians treated, for example, LGBT folk, and let's not forget that people like the KKK are explicitly religious, and so the way they've treated other races that weren't white, et cetera, you look at religion and it is pretty darned prejudiced against a lot of people, and there's been a lot of violence committed in its name.
Okay, but the thing is, what's so ridiculous about this bionic dance is that I could list a number of instances in which atheistic groups have gone around the world and done horrible things, but you would never count that.
But that's the thing, though, is were they doing what they were doing in the name of having no God? Was their atheism as much of a deciding factor, as much as a determining factor as you think?
Okay, so let's zoom for. I'm going to do a little bit of a thought experiment, right? So let's say we do this. Let's say we had Christianity, right? Let's say hypothetically that Christianity. I'm showing how this epistemological framework doesn't work. Let's say that we eliminate the questions of the future, right? But it turns out we get rid of Christianity, right? And then under atheism,
wait,
let's do this first. I think
it'll illustrate the problem. I'm not agreeing to the premise here. Why would we eliminate the concerns of the future? That's exactly.
No. I'm saying we could reveal the state and then see how the epistemology won't even recognize a revealed state, right? Like the epistemology you're proposing couldn't even recognize the state of the universe, where atheism was manifestly more harmful to humanity than Christianity was. No matter how harmful atheism is, we could never actually view it as harmful.
Well, that's the thing, though, is what, because you have to explicitly show that it was as a result of having no religion that things got worse.
You can explicitly show that people with religious practice behave more charitably. We have studies on that.
I disagree.
Oh, I could read them. I mean, I didn't come with tons of studies prepared, but I have a few. Like you can show that people with practiced religiosity. I mean, the Putnam book American Grace goes over how, on average, religious people give more to charity, both secular and religious. Okay. We have other studies that show increased sociability due to intrinsic religiosity and religious practice. I mean, so there's that.
Sure but the thing is, you sure don't have a lot of atheists going around trying to, say, murder LGBT folk or people from other races that they don't agree with.
BionicDance, your epistemological framework
trying to murder people from other religions. I mean, you don't have atheists going and doing that crap.
You do have atheists going around murdering people for being part of a religion. That has literally happened in history several times.
Sure it has. But you have more religious people doing it throughout history.
Do you have evidence of that?
You have more the Crusades, the Inquisition.
That's not evidence.
The Nazis were explicitly religious.
Do you have any evidence that over a similar time period that per capita atheists don't murder more people than Christians
if you want that kind of statistic, no, I don't have it. But there are enough examples to point out that when you say that religious people are more charitable, it's just not true. Plus, you can't point to, say, for example, communist Russia and leave out like fairly secular places in, say, for example, Western Europe that do pretty darn well. It's kind of like when they try to say, oh, look at Venezuela, this socialist place has been so horrible, and then ignore Sweden. I mean, basically, most
people don't consider Sweden to be a socialist.
except that's the version that's the vision of socialism that people like Bernie Sanders are always pointing out. Whenever
I don't
like,
know. Bernie Sanders literally got corrected by this when he pointed to Denmark, not Sweden, but Denmark, and this Denmark's guy like, we're not socialist, we're a market economy.
okay, but it's still the model that he's going for. Okay, and the point being that nobody needs religion to be the kind of charitable you're claiming that religious people are. Plus, I'm saying that these giving to charity examples that you're giving do not offset the violence done in the name of religion.
We don't have any good evidence to show that statistically that's the case. We do not have any evidence to show that Christians are more violent than atheists. There's been no. Okay, I'm not aware of any.
Here's the thing, though. Not having that violence has to be better than having it, and so not having the Christian
demonstrated that violent difference exists.
Hold on 1 second. Just hear the rest from BionicDance.
Okay, not having that violence is better. Well, let's start from this point. Would you deny that not having that violence is better?
I am against violence, but I think you knew that, right?
Okay, so would you deny that Christian-inspired violence, not having that is better?
Yes, not having Christian-inspired violence is better.
Thank you. Now, thus, if we didn't have the Christian violence in the United States, we'd be better off without it. So not having Christianity is better for the West. There we go.
No, but then you can do this with anything. So you agree?
Well, of course you can do it with anything.
You're a socialist.
The question was whether Christianity.
Yeah, are you for democracy? Are you for democracy?
Depends how that's applied, because there are multiple ways to apply. There are multiple ways to apply democracy.
Do you agree with people voting on their leaders?
I do, but
do you agree historically the democratically elected leaders have killed people?
But I. Under certain very specific.
Just follow me on this thought experiment. I'll demonstrate how this logic is.
Okay. Well, no, but see.
Do you agree that democratic elected leaders have done violence?
Do I agree that people should elect their leaders? Yes. Do I think, for example, the Electoral College is working for us?
I didn't ask you about the case.
So much.
No, I asked about the Electoral College. I said you believe in democracy,
those are
right?
Counted in a different way when it's the popular vote versus something like the Electoral College, and that's where I start to have issues with because we're not, strictly speaking, a democracy. We're a democratic republic.
Okay, so are you for a democratic republic?
I'm not sure it works as well as other possible democratic systems could.
Name one thing that you're for.
Such as, I'm for a lot of things. I'm for Disney not making more Star Wars movies. What do you want specific?
Name one political ideology that you're for. We're going to show how this works.
I've named quite a few. Like,
so
let's say,
you're for a model of socialism, right?
I'm for is LGBT equality. You want an example? Let's talk about that one.
Let's go with socialism.
Let's go for the LGBT stuff because I can defend that better. I know it.
But it's important that it's broad enough for this thought experiment. So you're for socialism, socialism, right?
So wait a minute. So it's important that it be super freaking broad? I don't think so.
Because Christianity is broad.
Because Christianity may be broad, but you know what? Atheism isn't.
Okay, so whatever positive ideology you had, democratic socialism, you're for that, right?
Okay, I'm not committing to that because again,
what are you going to commit to be for?
Dude, I'm not committing to that because there's probably a lot of aspects of it where I'd go, yeah, actually, I don't agree with that particular breed of democratic socialism. There might be specifics where I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to commit to that specific thing. That's why I want to be a little more laser focused, pinpoint on this so that it's definitely something I agree with instead of something where you might be able to point at some little detail and then go, see, that disproves everything. Okay, so I'd rather this be something a lot more specific. Thank you very much indeed.
So you're aware that democratic socialists have killed people in the past at massive scales, right? Why is this unfair to do this? Can you explain BionicDance why this line of logic? You knew this.
I just explained it. Apparently you weren't listening.
But you're no, I'm not. I'm totally listening. You're not actually making an argument about Christianity. You're making an argument about
fine.
affiliating yourself with any broad set of ideas.
No, I am making an argument against Christianity because Christianity hurts people a lot of the time. And I want that hurt to go away. And it's not going to go away unless we can curtail an influence.
You understand that any ideology that's existed historically in the past has hurt people.
Okay,
Right?
well, but see, the question was not about that. The question was whether Christianity is better. That was the question.
I'm giving you an example of how the only arguments you're making extend just from how linguistically this question is structured.
No, it's
so for instance, Bernie Sanders is a democratic socialist.
I was
right?
given a topic for what this debate was going to be about.
Okay,
if you want to tell me, oh, it's not about that anymore, then I wasn't here to have the conversation you're trying to force. I was here to
I'm happy to compare atheists as a demographic group.
That's what I was here to discuss. If you're not going to discuss that, then this debate should stop.
Do you understand my point about positive
I don't give
statements?
a rat's hindquarters about your point because it's not relevant to the discussion. I was given a topic. I'm going to discuss that topic.
You're going to discuss a comparison between something that exists and something that is a placeholder.
I'm going to have this discussion. I was not told, like, okay, let's see if Christianity is better than fill in the blank. I was told that this conversation will be about whether or not we're better off with Christianity or not. That's the topic. That's the topic I was prepared to discuss. If that's not what you want to discuss, I can just go.
Have you heard the statement democracy is the worst of all systems except for all the other ones?
I have heard that.
Okay, so do you understand the point that statement's trying to make?
Yeah, but what is it? How does that relate to Christianity being better?
It means that when you examine a system that's good in isolation, it looks terrible. It only looks good when you compare it to all the other shitty systems.
Okay, but
I'm a Christian.
That presupposes that Christianity is the best.
Before you go on, BionicDance,
presupposes that Christianity is the best.
What?
That presupposes that Christianity is the best.
The statement has nothing to do with Christianity. The statement's with democracy.
Yes, but see, that's the thing. Again, I'm trying to relate it back to the topic I was told this would be about.
Do you understand the point that democracy is the worst of all systems except for all the other ones is trying
I understand that point. I don't understand how it's supposed to relate to whether or not Christianity is better.
So the idea of that statement is that democracy looks bad if you examine it in isolation, but it looks good when you compare it to everything else that could possibly replace it. My case for Christianity is not that Christianity looks good if it were compared to nothing, because nothing looks good.
We're not comparing it to nothing.
You literally are.
Okay, no, see, I'm saying here's what Christianity has done that has really hurt people, and we're better off without it.
And you could say this is what democracy has done that's really hurt people. Are we better off without it?
No, not necessarily. But
okay, so then how does that argument hold?
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, though.
You've answered your own question. You've answered your own question.
No, I haven't answered my own question.
Why this line of logic is you've answered it.
Okay.
Christianity is a lot of bad things. Therefore, we should get rid of it. And democracy, and you immediately rejected it without a second thought.
Okay, here's the thing, though. Okay, the question is still, is Christianity better? Now, if you were to say, now here's the thing, if people were to be Christian and mind their own business, if they could play nicely and share with the other kids, I'd be like, sure, let's have Christianity. But what I'm against is this Christian dominance over everybody else's lives.
I believe people should mind their own business.
Well, a lot of Christians disagree with you, and that's the point.
Too. A lot of atheists don't mind their own business. A lot of Christians don't mind their own business.
Okay, here's the thing. I have said many times,
2-minute warning just to let you guys know.
Videos.
Okay.
I've said many times in my videos that I am doing what I do out of self-defense. Okay, and that's the thing about Christianity. If Christians could share and play nice with the other kids, I'd shut up. I wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't see religion in general as a threat, and Christianity in particular is a threat to me and people I care about. So again, if if the question is, are we better without Christianity? The answer is yes.
I'm not trying to dispute that Christians have done bad things to you or to your group in the past, but I don't think you can jump from that to a general fear of Christians or a
Yeah,
general dislike of Christianity. I think that that's the same. That's kind of the logic of like, oh well, a
but
black person is
again,
something bad to me in the past, therefore I don't like black.
but see, that's not what I said. What I said was that if Christians can play nicely, I don't care what they do. See, that's the thing is I'm not necessarily against Christianity being in the West. I'm against Christianity governing in the West.
And I think that there's an ideology always governs.
Okay, well, it shouldn't be. It should not be an ideology that says women don't have control over their own bodies. It should not be an ideology that says gay people should be marginalized. It shouldn't be an ideology that has even any racist overtones. And Christianity checks all of those boxes.
We're going to move to the Q&A if that's okay. I know that Dave,
Okay,
you have an
let's
answer.
go ahead.
But
Yeah, I think I've already answered that contention, so it's more than fair that we move to the Q&A.
Gotcha. So next we will take your questions, and thanks so much for your questions. Really, really interesting. So with that, also want to say we saw a couple new subscribers, or we're going. James Armstrong, thanks for joining us. Glad you're here. And Zero Lives Remain, thanks for joining the community. We're glad you're here, and we hope you feel welcome. So Brian G, thanks for your super chat. He's coming at you early, Dave. He says, why does the Distributist hate atheists so much? Oops, debate hasn't started yet. Never mind, carry on. Sorry, James. It came at you before the debate started, so if you want to give a response, you can.
I don't hate atheists. I don't want to do the some of my best friends are atheists thing, but I do have a lot of thinkers that I really respect who are atheists. I review a lot of right-wing books, and a lot of far right-wingers are atheists, and a lot of very interesting scientists are atheists as well. So I want to recognize their contributions as much as the next person. But I still think that for a society, Christianity is healthier than the kind of ideologies that tend to exist in atheistic vacuums.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Avadia Nirvana. Thanks so much for your super chat as well. They said, shouldn't we give immigrants time to assimilate?
I agree. Although, I mean, because the United States is supposed to be a melting pot, I'm not sure how much they have to assimilate, but it would be nice if, again, we can all relate to each other. We can all agree on a lot of things where like a lot of the time you'll see racism where it's just xenophobia, like we don't want you to assimilate. I see that a lot from usually right wingers. So
last time this question was brought to me, I was assured that anyone who wanted people to assimilate was being racist. So I don't know what to make of it.
But anyone who wants to assimilate is being racist. Yeah, I'm not sure how that is.
It's racist to ask people to give up their cultures and assimilate into.
Well, maybe we disagree on what assimilation means, but okay. Because I don't think that people should have to become more American, like they should conform to like white people or anything. I don't think that's true.
Got it. So there's maybe some overlap or agreement there. The Avadia Nirvana, thanks for your other super chat. Now they're coming at you, Kate. They said the most deadly communist regimes were atheistic. At least I think that's for you.
See, that's the thing though, is people love to point to that, to say they were atheistic. But what they don't do is show how not having a God influenced what they did. That it was somehow done in the name of not having a God. They never seem to be able to somehow bring those two together. That like, I didn't have a God, and in the name of that, I'm going to kill these people. That doesn't really seem to come up very much. When challenged on that, they can't say it. They just have this like dog whistle buzzword of they were atheistic, like they were the same as a state that is religious. It's not the same. So I don't see how that's relevant.
I think it's incredibly similar. I mean,
Of course,
most states commit violence in the name of ideological power struggles, or just power struggles
okay.
on
And
ideology. So it's not even when you look at things like the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre or any of these other religious massacres that usually gets tried out as being a religiously inspired massacre. These things typically have power politics behind them. And when they do genuinely have religion as an ideology behind them, they're not in the name of just believing in a god. They're in the name of an ideology that happens to believe.
okay. And what ideology? But
communism.
where is that ideology necessarily the thing that inspired them to go around killing people?
In no case is the ideology ever necessarily the thing that made them go.
Well, there you go.
That's my
you
point.
can't
In
point
both the
to them
Christian
saying
cases
they're
and the
atheists
atheist
and
cases,
then say thus atheists are bad. You can't do it. But
You
when you
can't
look
do
at
Christians either. That's the point.
explicitly when you look at explicitly theistic regimes, they did it in the name of dogma. Things that are actually written down saying God commands this.
They
So
did.
it's not-
Communists did it
cannot-
in the name.
You cannot equate the two. You can't equate the two.
I'm sorry, just because the super chat was for Kate, I'm just going to let her have the last word.
Sure.
Brian Stevens, thanks for your super chat. He said, "What tenet of atheism pushes for death?"
Atheism doesn't have tenets.
Dialectic materialism does.
Well, atheism does not, because atheism is not an ideology. I mean, if religion never existed, everyone would be an atheist. That's just all it is. I as an atheist, do not necessarily. I don't look at a value I have, an ideal I have, and say, and I hold this ideal because I don't have God belief. It doesn't work like that. And anyone who thinks that atheism is just like there's a God-shaped hole in our psyche that needs to be filled with something doesn't understand atheism.
Gotcha. Next up, we have a super chat from Steven Steen, the machine, as he likes to be called. Thanks for your super chat, Steven. He's, let's see. You guys can team up on him if you want. He says, both debaters' points are super cringy. I'm sorry. Everybody's
Oh, well, cope. I don't know.
So, Steven Steen poking the bear. Okay, writer John Buck, thanks for your super chat. He says, big fan of Dave. His video on Mencius Molebug is...
Mencius Molebug.
Okay.
Hey, there's an atheist I respect a lot.
Gotcha. Apparently, writer John Buck appreciated that video. So, writer
Thank
John...
you.
And then thanks also, writer John Buck, for your second super chat. He says, if Christianity's broad and atheism isn't, doesn't that mean Christianity is more inclusive?
More what?
Inclusive.
Inclusive of what exactly? Because I don't think that it is. I think that when you look at Christianity, there are some definite rules of who's not allowed. You know, I mean, if you believe this, if you believe that, get out. You're not one of us. It's a very exclusive club, not inclusive. And that's the thing is atheism doesn't have to include people. It's not a group. It's not an affiliation that people have. I mean, there's this mental image people seem to have of like card-carrying atheists that, I don't know, go to meetings and have atheist temples or something, that it's like a religion, but that's not the nature of atheism.
Gotcha. Next up, thanks for your super chat. Steven Steen stirring the pot again. He says, we all lost in this debate, all of us. If you guys both want to lob insults at Steven, I'm okay with that.
Your mother wears combat boots? I don't know.
So next up, we've got Aaron Rupley, forgive me if I mispronounce it, says, question for Kate. In theological debates, why do liars refuse to show their face?
That's not for me to say. One thing I always say to people is, you don't get to tell me what I think. That's for me to tell you. So I'm not going to say why they don't show their faces. You're going to have to ask them.
Well, if the question is on me, it's because I own half a camera ready to go. I show my face plenty of times on my channel. You can look at it and decide if you think I'm ugly or not. I did debate against Christy Winters, in which I did a face-to-face debate, but I wasn't set up for it today.
Gotcha.
And it's also not true. But I mean, I'm sure the question was tongue in cheek more than anything else. But I mean, like when I debated Matt Powell on the Non Sequitur show, he showed his face for sure, and there have been other examples too. So I like G-Man, for example, if you know him. So I mean, like I say, the question was tongue in cheek, I'm sure, but it's also not true. Just to be pedantic, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a joke, obviously.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And Tyler Durden, thanks for your question. We're gonna try to fly through these just because I'm usually bad at this, but I think we can get through a good number of these. So he asked, thanks for your question, and also thanks for that last super chat. He asked, are organizations that deliberately shield child molesters from legal prosecution criminal accessories? Should these organizations face criminal charges? And
I don't know exactly what the law is on that, but I definitely think it's not okay. Just speaking, I don't know, morally, ethically, it makes me cringe. My empathy meter goes, no. So,
Gotcha.
I mean, you're talking to the wrong person, because one of my chief complaints right now is there's a number of higher ups in the Catholic Church that are personal allies of Pope Francis that I don't feel have been sufficiently punished for their role in covering up some of these things, and our attempts to get rid of them have been quite frustrating. But I think this is just something that exists pretty much everywhere. You look, there's been a number of these scandals in schools, in the public school system, and there's been a number of these scandals even in places like the BBC. So the question is, how do you handle cover-ups for these sex abusers? They seem to happen a lot, and it's not just at Catholic school, and not just in the Catholic Church. I think this is a problem with hierarchy generally. I think you need more oversight, and I think that the church needs more oversight.
and I'm looking at the chat. Tyler Durden here is saying I didn't say Catholic Church, and I mean, I never took it exactly that way. So, okay, although it seems to be rather rampant there. But if someone is helping to cover up, I think there's certainly a case to make that they were an accessory, or that they were aiding and abetting. I don't know. But they were certainly not blameless. Their hands are not clean.
I don't think that's a point of contention. If it's a general statement, if you cover up for a sex abuse, then you are complicit in that because you're covering up for a crime. I think that's just generally the case, right?
I think we agree on this point.
Sure.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, Iron Charioteer asks Distributist why he is in favor of top-down rule form of government, which has proven to be ineffective in history, i.e. monarchy and dictatorships. Is it because of your God?
I'm in favor of monarchy. I made a video on I think he means that because I'm skeptical of democracy. Maybe that's it. I'm not for monarchy. If there's one compelling argument for democracy, it's that it's the worst system except for all the other ones. And by democracy, I mean the democratic republics that we have currently. I think that we have a lot of mythological propaganda about how democracies work. A vote is almost meaningless in some sense, and almost is sort of a critical word. And so if you want to have any kind of meaningful democracy, you're going to have to localize the power. And I'm a big fan of localization and getting leaders to be more accountable. And I don't think that relying solely on democratic means is the way to accomplish that. I think that making sure that there are structures in place for incentives for leaders to always be answerable to the people whose decisions directly impact who their decisions directly impact is the answer, and it's not always necessarily democratic. But I'm not some kind of monarchy advocate.
Gotcha.
It's got some interesting qualities.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And next up, and by the way, anybody in the Q&A, if you notice that I'm trying to get everybody's first question in at least once before I go on to somebody else's second question, because sometimes, occasionally, we even have somebody will ask like 4 questions in the first like half hour, and so I'm just trying to get hopefully to one of everybody's. Hayward Jeb Lomi asks, question for a Distributist: what's unfair about atheism not being a religion if the right answer is no religion?
Well, if the right answer to the question, does God exist, if the answer is no, then atheism is true. If there's no God, then atheism is true.
That's not what atheism is, though.
But, hold on, I'm not answering your question. I'm answering this guy's question.
Yes, but you're strawmanning the hell out of atheism.
Hold on. Well, let's just let him finish, and then if you want to give a quick rejoinder, we're okay with that.
Okay, so as an ideological proposition, atheism is just a no answer on a question is perfectly fine. The difficulty is when you take atheism as some kind of alternative to Christianity. And that's kind of, it's thorny, because if you're going to treat atheism as if it's a non-entity, that we cannot descriptively associate events that atheists did in the past to this object, then it's literally a game where only one side can score losses, and it's a ridiculously fixed game. And it's not scientific in any way. In order to be scientific, it needs to be a like to a like. It needs to be it's totally unfalsifiable at that point, if you want to use that.
Well, that's the thing is, I mean, okay, number one, if you look at modern atheist advocates right now, we are very much pushing the idea that an atheist is just someone who has zero belief in any gods. There's different flavors of atheism, where some do flat out say that there is no God, while others say I'm simply not convinced. And people like me are willing to say that, for example, babies are atheists because they have no God belief, that they are passive atheists. So when you try to say that atheism is too nebulous, that you can't make these scientific comparisons, well, the fact is that life isn't always fair. It's not always one-to-one, and this is a case where it's not. And you can scream it's not fair all day, but that doesn't change the reality.
It's not having anything to do with quality of atheism. This is just the linguistics we've used to describe this debate. The example is, what's committed more crimes? Let me finish.
Let's just give, since the super chat was originally for Dave, hold on, Distributist, just 1 second, I'll give you a chance to respond. Let's just give Distributist the last word on this, because the super chat, if I remember right, I think it was for him.
It's directed to me, yeah. So I mean, what's committed more crimes, democracy or non-democracy? Well, democracy has committed more crimes because non-democracy, we can't associate crimes with it. Therefore, democracy is bad. You can do this with anything. Just compare that thing to not that thing, and then take all of the bad things that thing ever did and weigh them up as negatives. You just do this to anything you don't like, and you can get the same result back again. You insta-win.
Well, if you're going to insist,
I know the super chat
just said something about the linguistics you've used to discuss the question.
Or I should say, the question, I think, just because, forgive me, I'm so sorry. It's just to keep on going, just to try to get to as many questions.
Go ahead.
SJ, thanks so much for your question. And she asks, have them steelman one another's primary arguments. That would be interesting. And she
That's great. I think that's a great idea.
Credit to Hunter Bailey, or at least mentions him. So, if you guys want to do that...
I honestly didn't hear the question very well. What was it?
Sorry, I've got a little bit of background noise here. She said, have them steelman one another's primary argument. And that would be interesting.
Okay, I'm not sure. I've actually never heard the term steelman before.
To give the strongest version of their argument.
Of the opposite. Like make us describe the best part of the other person's argument. I'm not sure I really want to do that.
I can do that. I think the strongest the strongest version of my opponent's arguments is that Christianity would be an Orthodox Christian regime would be necessarily restrictive in mostly social ways on certain types of sexual practice. That's just going to be a reality. It's something that, and it's also true that with a lot more young people, you're going to get a lot more ideological violence. But young people are essential to keep society going with high birth rates. So I think that my opponent does have a point in the sense that we are talking, when we talk about a real ideology, we are talking about a necessary restriction on some other ideas, and that's a natural consequence. But I think on balance, the things that Christianity has to offer and the way that we could essentially run Christianity with a libertarian state at some levels could essentially ameliorate those disadvantages. So that's essentially how I would respond.
Yeah, see, I don't think you followed instructions there, because what it sounded like was you were supposed to say the strongest part of my argument, and you turned it around to be the strongest part of yours.
Well, I said you have a good point that Christianity is naturally going to be restrictive on people's sexualities. So that's a good point.
Okay. All right.
Let's say I can steel man it further. Another good point is that you're correct when you say Christians have killed people in the past, right? And that if you institute Christianity, when people killed each other, they would be killing each other, and they'd probably try to use Christian justifications to do that. So that's another thing, right? So that's a concern. That's a legitimate concern with Christianity going forward to the future. To steelman your point.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm seriously trying to think of a way to do that for your points, but there's so little that seems to work. Honestly, I'm trying to think of something, and it's not coming to me. I don't agree with almost anything you've said so far, and I'm trying to think of something where it's actually where you've made an argument that is even remotely good. I can't do it.
To steal my another argument that I don't agree with, for instance, like pro-choice. I mean, like, does Christianity restrict a right to an abortion? Yes, absolutely. I think that if you're somebody who's really focused on keeping that avenue open of making sure abortions keep on happening, then you have a legitimate reason to oppose, or a legitimate practical reason, because obviously if Christianity is true, then who cares about that? But you have a legitimate practical reason to oppose Christianity politically. I just think there are very few reasons to be pro-choice to begin with, I guess.
Well, I don't know. As near as I can tell, the strongest argument for your position is just, if you don't do it, then Christianity goes away. I'm sorry. I honestly can't answer this.
Do you consider, can I ask you a question? Do you consider the demographic survival of different nations to be a good thing?
Not necessarily. I mean, of course, it depends on what you mean by that. I mean, when you say demographics, specifically, what do you mean?
I mean that the people who the ethnicity that lives in France continues on with its own culture and traditions.
I think that everyone should fuck everyone till we're all the same color. I like the idea of a global culture.
Wouldn't that be kind of boring, though?
What's your point?
Well, okay, maybe that's the point. I just think it sounds to me that would be a little bit monotonous. But
well, it's up to you. But okay. I mean, I don't know. I think that it would really help a certain amount of unity between people if we didn't have those like racial barriers, for starters. I mean, certainly that I think that cultures should be preserved in a way that like we don't necessarily lose things of cultures that are good. You know, like say, for example, art and music and certain ideas and ideals that aren't hurtful. I mean, because there are definitely countries around the world where I look at them and I'm like, you know, that would actually be kind of cool to experience. But at the same time, I do look at the prejudice and the bigotry around the world that is simply a product of they're the wrong color, or just I don't like those particular facial features that come with a specific ethnicity. I at that point I'm like, it really would be better if we were all the same color. Although what's funny is that I'm actually extraordinarily racially diverse. In fact, I basically just need Asian to get the set. So if everyone started interbreeding with everyone, you'd eventually look like me, and I'm sorry for that.
Well, I don't. When I said I want to see cultural continuation, I was speaking mostly of ethnicity and not skin color or whatever. But they are highly correlated, so I can see how they're very tightly related. Especially if if you think a simulation is sort of racist, like a lot of people do think. So I think that naturally that I don't know. To me, it seems like in order to have real diversity, you have to have difference. And if we're all the same thing, even if that same thing is a mixture of everything, it still just feels like the same thing.
I don't know.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. I was just saying.
No problem.
To try to get to more questions. Translator Premium, thanks so much for your super chat. They said the topic might have been better framed as: is Christianity a net benefit or net detriment to society?
Which is kind of how I treated it.
I guess. I mean, the problem is in that case, if it's a then you can't start bringing up things in the past, right? That would sort of exclude that. Once you start going back and going like, oh, well, they did this bad thing in the past, and then the demographic arguments that your average Christian citizen has these sociological advantages over your average atheist citizen, then that becomes a relevant data point.
Gotcha.
Well, the way I see it, a lot of the advances that have been made have often happened in spite of Christianity. You get a lot of Christians who like to say, well, look at this amazing scientist who happened to be Christian, but at the time that scientist was active, like, it was really difficult to not be Christian. And a lot of the discoveries they made would actually outright contradict a lot of Christian, well, I'll say mythology, expectations of the nature of the universe. So it's really not a good argument to point to Christians who made one advance or another, because they almost always did it in spite of their religion.
Can I ask a question here? Because this is really killing me, and I really want to ask this question.
Like really quick.
Why? I've always wondered this. I've always wondered this. Why do atheists who hold this view, why do they think that the scientific revolution happened in Christendom and not in like a Buddhist country where the religion does not have a theistic component to it?
Wait, sorry, say that last part again. Where religion?
What do you think the reason is that the scientific revolution, if Christianity is so suppressive to scientific knowledge, why did the scientific revolution happen in Christendom and not in the Buddhist countries, which had many sects that had no God belief whatsoever?
Well, I'll have to ask you why you think that those are correlated.
I mean, BionicDance a chance to respond.
I mean, correlation is not causation.
Just to get through as many questions as we can.
I didn't hear the answer to that question.
Well, okay, I know. It's just that we have a lot of questions. I just want to.
Okay, well, go ahead. Hopefully, I'll hear an answer to that question at some point in my life.
Is that
what I said is correlation is not causation.
That's not an answer, but go ahead with the next question.
Basically,
it's not the answer you like.
Writer John Buck, thanks for your super chat. He said, "He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that." Thoughts?
I'm not sure that's a question.
He's giving it's from John Stuart Mill. It's a quote it says, "He who knows only his own side of the case knows little of that."
Little of that?
I think that it's saying that if you only know your own case, you probably don't even know your own case that well if you appear to only know your own case.
I suppose that depends largely on the topic.
I think that sometimes is overrated. Like, for instance, I could have never experienced, like, I could be a scientist who just discovered something amazing about M-brain theory, and I could know nothing about Platonic views of physics that existed thousands of years before. But my inability to tell you what the Potomac argument is for the size of stars or the ability to measure the distance between stars would not detract from my knowledge of my own science, which would be modern day M-brain theory. So
Yes, we agree on this
there's a
point.
point. I understand what he's trying to say. He's trying to say that you need to be aware of how to structure your opponent's arguments before you refute it. But at the same time, I think it can be taken a little bit too far.
I have to agree.
Gotcha. Well, there's overlap there, some agreement. You guys are in the same boat. You guys are a team on that one. I actually like that quote from John Stuart Mill a lot, but I guess it's you guys versus me. But I'm glad. Thanks so much for coming on, you guys. I totally appreciate it. It's honestly been a treat. I love your guys' passion, and I'm so sorry for when I interjected so many times.
Oh, no problem.
It's I enjoy your passion, and so it's a hard job sometimes, but I think you guys did your job spectacularly. So with that, want to say thanks so much for everybody for your questions in the live chat. Want to remind you, the speakers have their links in the description. So if you're like, oh snap, I was loving that, hey, you can check them out right now. And maybe you're like, oh, that Distributist Dave. You know what? You control him all you want at his channel. But for real, I appreciate both of you so much. I think it's like sometimes it's fiery, but you'll notice that at the end of the day, my guess is you two are like, yeah, I'm not gonna egg your house. Like, we go on with our day. So.
All right.
Hopefully not. I don't know, Dave, but
No. I tend to bring out a lot of people anger in a lot of people, but very rarely on religion. I almost never talk about this topic. It's just not something I talk about a lot.
It was interesting. I appreciated getting to hear both of you. So thanks so much, everybody, for coming by. And
right.
Last time, I'll just mention it. Everybody's links are in the description. So with that, we appreciate you being here. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care.
Bye.
Don't get run over. Wow, dude boy quit really fast, didn't he?